Okay, and I will open the meeting at 7:02. Good evening, everybody. This meeting is being recorded, so please take care not to screen share, put anything up on your Zoom that you don't want captured in the recording. All votes this evening will be taken by a roll call vote. And I just need to confirm that members are present and can hear me and participate remotely. So, Kevin.
I can hear you and present.
Okay, Ken.
Yep.
Danielle.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Jillian.
Yes.
And Katie.
Yes.
All right. Welcome, everybody. So we have a new member this evening. I'll just start off quickly and say welcome to Kevin. We have had him at meetings before, so I think we have some familiarity with him, but now he is a member of our group. So welcome, Kevin. Thank you for stepping up. And oh, sorry. Did you want?
Just wanted to say I'm glad to be here and very proud to be serving with all of you.
Thank you very much. So first item on our agenda this evening is to discuss the Collins financial projection model. We talked a little bit about this last time, and since last meeting, I did meet with Greg and Lori about it, just to get a sense of, expectations, what we can do with it, where it is right now. And then we wanted to bring it back to us to discuss it, see where we want to move forward. I will say, there is a lot in there that is not currently accurate and updated. There are also a lot of assumptions that Lori wasn't so sure about. She specifically mentioned the COLA assumption as being low, I believe she was saying. And that, honestly, for her to go through and make it fully updated would be a lot right now. So that's probably not something that's going to happen in the very near future. And that, what else did we talk about? And that Greg's, use of it as like an actual in real-time budgeting tool, we're certainly not there yet. But we did discuss a little bit Peter's suggestion to see if we could maybe retro fit it a little bit and give it some testing, like go ahead and put in fiscal years, a few previous fiscal years, sort of run it through the model and see what happens and see how close we sort of came to those and kind of get an idea of how well it works. Danielle reached out after the meeting and said that she would be very interested in trying to do some of this data work for us. I have let Lori and Greg know that. So hopefully Danielle will get a little bit of time to spend with it and maybe do that experiment that we were talking about with the previous fiscal years and bring it back and see what she finds. So that's very exciting. So I guess we'll just open up the discussion and go from there. Go ahead, Peter.
On the back years, I have a spreadsheet with, I don't know, something like FY13 to present of all the town meeting budgets. So I could give that, which I may have sent it out. I forget when you joined, Danielle. I often send it out in the spring or something, or in the fall, January or February. But could send you that, which I think, using that, you could come up with, it's kind of like pick a year, do the projections, and then fill in the actuals and try and figure out what the heck, why we didn't need an override, which all the projections seem to indicate we did.
Yeah, I started poking around in the model and it seems like a pretty standard financial model. So yeah, I'll take a look and see if I can find that, but if you want to send it again, I'll definitely.
Yeah, I will.
Yep. And
Okay.
I mean, a couple of the assumptions looked a little weird to me, but I have to dig more into it. Some of the revenues assumptions looked a little bit low, which could be a reason. I mean, obviously, if you're assuming low growth in revenues, which we know it's not awesome growth in revenues that we're really experiencing, but some of them look lower than I would have expected. So I'll dig into that and do like a variance analysis essentially on, what happened versus what we would have expected to happen, given how the model is set up. And then I
Okay.
figure we can take a look at why that was unexpected results, whether it was one-time sort of things that we don't expect to repeat, or if the kind of baseline assumptions were flawed, and then we can figure out how we want to use it going forward.
Sounds great. Ken, you have your hand up?
So I think, it would be good for us, the 7 of us, to come to agreement on what the purpose of this is from our perspective. It makes no sense to me to put a lot of effort into updating a spreadsheet that is largely going to go unused. That's a lot of effort to do that. So originally, the purpose of the spreadsheet was to provide an integrated planning tool, discussion tool across all of the boards. So this would be, the select board, the school committee, the FinCom, and the town administrator and his finance director. The idea was that we would be able to take a look at trends over the past several years, look at the current or upcoming years, depending on where we are in the process. Obviously earlier in the process, it is the next fiscal year, but eventually, it works towards the current year. And, and have discussions about priorities. And then take a look into the future at assumptions that we could make about spending trends. One of the things that Bob McCarthy would often point out is that a number of the trends seem to be fairly set in, not set in stone, but there wasn't a lot of wiggle room. There wasn't a lot for us to do. And that was where we spent most of our time, was looking at the larger levers that we could do something with over the longer period of time. This was also something that, prior to COVID, we were starting to see that in the out years, eventually, in order to raise the revenue we would need to have in order to run the town. And this is, the schools, the infrastructure, et cetera, that, there would not be, revenues were not increasing at a fast enough pace to be able to keep up with costs. And so we're going to need to find new sources of revenue, which in the short term is fairly limited, basically overrides. And the longer term, obviously, we can do development and so forth. Something, concerns me in what you said earlier, Alana, which was that Lori was not sure that she would be able to keep the assumptions up to date. What that suggests to me is that this would not be a useful planning tool for all of us. In other words, if it were a useful planning tool, obviously we would take the time to keep, the information up to date and to be able to use it. But if we're not going to do that, I'm not sure that it makes a whole lot of sense to, to put the effort into it. And so I just feel as though we ought to come to agreement on what we think it ought to be, and then sort of force the issue with the town administrator, with the select board, with the school committee, saying this is the tool that we are going to adopt as a town. It's not the FinCom's tool. It is our tool collectively in order to have communication about the past, how those trends from the past affect the future, and what we think assumptions, what are reasonable assumptions about the future that, that are going to affect the way that we do it. So that if there's a, for example, if there is, if there's a sense that we're going to need an override, then we need to have discussions about that sooner rather than later. If we don't feel that that's the need, then where are we going to get the other revenues in the shorter term? So I would just propose that before
right.
we sit there and talk about, all these things, that we come to agreement on that.
Can I weigh in?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
does
go ahead,
someone else
Peter.
want to jump in? So I think it's early to be talking about what you're talking about, Ken. I mean, I don't think we can dictate the model to the town. I think we made a start at it, and essentially we have to convince others that this is a useful tool. And we made a start at it and got derailed by COVID blowing everything up. And we agreed that we weren't going to pursue it. I think we're back to, I think we're the best equipped to try and make a usable model and then decide maybe we need to tweak it too. Maybe, the model doesn't show, for instance, the continuing increase in out-of-district tuition, and that we need to make that a detail in the model and include that in the projections so that we can get an accurate picture of, what the future will show.
Well, certainly I
And
would agree with that.
Yeah, well, maybe whatever the line is. But I think it would be worthwhile for us to continue to work with it and try to convince other people that it's a useful model. I'm still in the camp that we're just starting this and we're in the convincing mode. We're not going to dictate to school committee or board of selectmen that this is, or town administrator, that this is the model they have to use. And then on creating the model and keeping it updated, I'm kind of with Danielle. It's a fairly basic model. I don't want to put words in Danielle's mouth, but I don't think it's a whole lot of work that we just update it. Even if Lori isn't going to do the work of updating it, I mean, to put in the total that we just put in, that we just approved this spring at town meeting is, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes worth of work. And then, we have, a 2% assumption on most line items. And it's not rocket science.
Yeah, and I don't,
so-
I would
I don't wanna
disagree
say
a
that-
little, actually.
go ahead, Jillian.
I think some of the ways that there's more detailed tabs and stuff interplay with each other, I think is kind of complicated. I think if it was like the summary tab with just the overall budgets, but if you click on a lot of those cells, they go back to other spreadsheets, which are like sort of more detailed
Mm-hmm.
projections for like breakdowns of line items. You know what I mean?
All right, maybe maybe I am a little off on it, but
So I mean, either way.
I guess
the-
I still
the
think
entire
we're on the
workbook is
convincing.
improved. So
sorry,
I,
Danielle.
no, it's okay. So I haven't had time to take like a really deep dive into it, but I do think that updating it on a regular basis at the detailed level probably would be a significant amount of work, but I can change. So this is what I do. So I build workbooks like this and I can change it so that we can choose whether we want to use like the summary level or if we want to get into the detailed level. And that way we can dive into those details like annually or something if we want to, but otherwise on an ongoing basis, if you want to play with assumptions, you can just do a higher level. So that's something I can look at as I'm going through this. I think,
Yeah, I think
it
that would be
doesn't feel like-
perfect. I think if it was like the high level summary, like the first spreadsheet or whatever, like the first tab, the summary tab, I think
Mm-hmm.
that would be perfect. I don't know we need to necessarily go in the weeds, like you said, every time.
yeah, and I think when I think about the town's involvement, I think if other town departments and other committees and the select board want to use the same tool as us, I think that's wonderful. And I think that we'd be speaking the same language and being able to align on assumptions and all of that. But I think there's value in us using it, even if they don't adopt it. And to Peter's point, since we're kind of getting at the getting familiar stage, it seems early for us to say this is what we would want to adopt ourselves, never mind what we would want everyone to adopt. So I think there's time to kind of make that decision and go down that road. I do think, though, it would be important for us to at least align with Lori on assumptions. So that's one of the things I'm doing as I'm going through this is like, what are the key assumptions? What am I seeing in the actuals for the last couple of years? And then what would be reasonable to project going out? And then I think getting her take on that would be really helpful. But in terms of actually needing her and her team to update the workbook, I think if I can raise it up a level, we'll be able to do that without a heavy lift.
Okay. I'm just gonna start taking some notes. Go ahead, Kevin. I see your hand raised.
So I had a couple thoughts. I think I would echo what Ken was saying in that I think we as a committee have to take ownership of this tool, and we're going to have to lead by example. But I think instead of worrying about what other groups initially, without worrying about what the other boards think about it, I think we should just design this tool for ourselves and for what works for us, and then look to expand it to other groups once we have it working for ourselves. Because I think other boards are going to essentially follow our lead if we build this thing right. My second question is for the chair, and I'm wondering if we could get some ground rules on what we're allowed to do collaboratively without running afoul of open meeting laws. Could we like collaborate and write comments via email, or is there some way we could work on this productively without running afoul of open meeting laws?
We can do, like, two of us could have a little subcommittee on it that talks back and forth, whatnot, and then brings it back to a meeting, but we can't have all of us on like an email chain discussing it in between meetings.
Okay. Even if it was like a open, even if it was like an open, freely available, discussion, for example, there are software repositories like Git where you could actually have a public repository and public comments that are available for anyone to view.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
They're only just now letting us meet via Zoom, where the open meeting law is a little, it's not quite as technological forward thinking.
So I think that's probably going to be the
any-
biggest impediment.
Any communication among a quorum of the committee has to be done in an announced meeting.
Right.
There has to be a notice issue, and it has to be an open communication. So the kind of thing that you're talking about. And just to be extra clear, you and I couldn't talk, and then you talk with Danielle, and then you talk separately with Katie, and then you talk
Correct.
with Peter, because at that point, even though those interactions are only one-on-one, you're still involving a quorum.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Ken. That's a good clarification.
So my third thought is, so I looked at the spreadsheet and it's a little bit complicated. It probably could be better done, but I'm wondering about the medium. I think spreadsheets are an option. We could even go to I don't know if we have any other computer programmers on the committee, but we could do some software, writing some data analysis in like Python. Or the third option would be to actually go to a commercial vendor of business intelligence software. The first thing that comes to mind is ClearGov. They actually sell a tool that I think is in the wheelhouse of this project, but I'm wondering if we should possibly consider a third-party vendor. At the very least, we could avoid this open meeting law impediment to be able to have someone who's able to bring on more than two people to actually work on and develop this tool.
Well, we do have some ClearGov. I don't know exactly how the contracts and things work with that, but I do know that Lori and Greg are in the process of getting a lot more of our data, of Maynard's data, onto ClearGov. So I can ask them specifically what we have in that capability and what we've already potentially paid for. I do believe you have to pay for some of that. So I'm not sure what level they're at with that, but I will ask them.
And I have a question for Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also something we could address down the road. I mean, I'm curious in what Danielle thinks, but I don't see this. I think the spreadsheet is a good, accessible tool that we all can deal with and are familiar with, and I think it's a pretty good tool for this type of project. But maybe Danielle disagrees. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely financial planning software out there that'll do like data trend analysis for you and things like that. But I think that I don't see a need for it here. I mean, we don't have like complex budgets and complex revenue streams and stuff like that. So I haven't, like I said, I haven't gotten into the weeds on it, but I also think that if we're trying to keep it high level, then that would make more sense to keep in Excel. We also have the hurdle of we would all have to learn to use a new tool if we want to go down that path.
Yeah, exactly.
And not just us, but everybody else that we might want to use it.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't see a clear need for it. I think it's not a bad question, Kevin.
Yeah.
I think that was a good line of thought, but the complexity doesn't seem to warrant it, in my opinion.
So
I just wanted to jump in and just say that the Collins Center model, we did spend some money, I think, on it, or maybe Greg won a grant and it didn't cost the town any money. So I think
He got a
that's
grant.
why. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's why we were using this as a starting model. But when I helped Bob make his graphs, I did make some of them in Prism and in Python. But I think, we were really concerned about accessibility. We wanted people, if they wanted to be able to see it, be able to open in Excel, and that's sort of I think they call them like human readable format or something, that it's a friendly document. So
Yeah, I agree. I think partially what would be really great if we do get this model to help us looking into the future and at projections is to be able to share that information at things like the big budget meeting in February, which is another public forum that we do usually get some other people, not only other departments, but some other town meeting voters usually come to that. And it's a good place to talk about this kind of thing and to have it be in a way that is accessible for those that are, there listening and watching, and something we can put up on a screen, I think will ultimately be the most helpful for town meeting voters. So that's certainly a lofty goal, I would say, for this to be able to help us disseminate information, not just have it for ourselves, but to disseminate it.
I do think, though, that ClearGov is worth seeing, like you said, checking in with them and seeing what they already have, because if they have something in there, we can definitely look to leverage it.
Yeah, and I think these mostly what was in the Collins model too is pre-Lori, so we just have to remember that she wasn't a part of these assumptions and things, and she's also still learning what went into this. And she is, but in her previous town, I think they did use a Collins model, she had said. So she is familiar with it. And I think ultimately, having something as a projection tool and also to wrap into their budgeting process to make everybody's lives easier. It sounds like they do multiple things for the budgeting process right now. So I think that would be, welcome all around. And she was also talking about like who she could have do some of the updating as well. So it didn't all, the treasurer could do some of it. She can do some of it. Some of the other departments could be doing it as well. So that might, balance the load of it as well.
Well, no, this isn't directly related to this, but I'm just curious, who comprises Lori's team?
She is the town accountant, and then there's the town treasurer, and that's, they don't have a budgeting person. They don't have any other staff. It's very small. The finance team.
Yeah, I was just
very
curious.
small.
I interned with the town of Belmont, and we had like the town accountant, assistant, and town accountant, and then basically me. So I didn't know if we had someone more junior too that could help her.
Yes,
Kevin
she has
Peterson.
one staff person.
Yeah. So right. Thank you for the reminder. Kevin. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's the assistant town accountant, I believe.
Okay.
Title. Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
So it sounds like to me, I think we're aligned on unless we hear something about ClearGov and there's something out there with ClearGov, I think we're aligned on a spreadsheet. I'm wondering if there's some way we could store this spreadsheet in a manner that it's collaboratively editable. Like I know Office 365 has that function. I know Google Docs has that function. I'm wondering if there's like some like shared spreadsheet that we could then share with 2 members of the FinCom, Lori, and other town staff that we could just all get together, swarm on, and just like edit all together. So that way we don't have a bunch of emails bouncing back and forth, and we don't have to like keep track of the versioning and all. Like, oh, you know, that version you got an email was like sent 5 months ago. I sent Danielle, you know, someone will say, oh, I sent Danielle that version. So I think we have to have like either look at like Office 365, Google Docs, or some other way of being able to collaboratively edit this spreadsheet.
Okay. Make that note.
So I'd propose that I take a stab at getting the spreadsheet in like a good template form for us first, so that we're
Okay.
not kind of editing something that the
Oh yeah.
structure might change. But yeah,
Right.
I do think at some point it makes sense, not only just for all of us to review it and say, you know, I think we should add this or move that, or, you know, better document, whatever. So I think it's worth figuring out where we want to do that at some point.
Yeah.
But I would like to take a stab at just on my local machine, kind of getting it into a good spot for everyone to take a look at and give feedback.
I
Yeah,
absolutely agree with that.
Absolutely. I
What's
think
that
it's important to
Shared documents.
go ahead, Jillian. Sorry.
Sorry. I would double check too with maybe legal counsel to see if such shared documents are allowed, or if that would be considered not
Okay.
open meeting law friendly,
Okay.
because we can edit them all at the same time.
Okay.
I mean, one thing we could do to avoid that possibility is only have the members of the model subcommittee as being able to access it. And that way they could then email like a snapshot out or
Mhm.
or just share the screen, but only
Okay.
have like the members of the subcommittee have the ability to edit and comment on that
Right.
document.
Yeah, this is definitely something I also raised in that, just when I was talking with Lori and Greg, like we want to be able to manipulate it, change it, but we don't want to necessarily be touching the copy, you know, that Lori has or whatnot. And then, but then to Kevin's point as well, like we don't want to be like, which one are you looking at? Well, I'm looking at this one. Well, that's the one from 4 months ago, you know. So agreed. This is definitely part of this process is figuring those logistics out for it. All right. Any other questions, comments about this?
I think we
Yep.
have to have an action item to decide who's going to be on I provisionally titled the model subcommittee. I think
I think,
Danielle's an obvious candidate. for
yeah,
that, but I think
certainly.
we should probably get one more involved as well.
Um,
My
Bef-
my inclination would be to wait until Danielle comes back.
Yeah.
Or something.
yeah.
I agree. Let her play
Let's
with
look
it a
at
little
that.
bit and see.
Okay. We'll put it on a future agenda item.
And the fact that we have Danielle, thank you. I think that's an amazing resource that we shouldn't skip over, and to
Mhm.
use that talent and experience, you know, I feel is a no-brainer. So I'm all aboard on that. But yeah, I feel we shouldn't jump the gun on planning around something we're not quite ready for. So getting the groundwork and the foundation work that Danielle will do, and then continuing on, I think is a good idea.
Yeah, and for context,
Okay.
I'm on vacation this week, so this is my plan for Wednesday, because this is what I do in my free time. So I'm planning on having something that you guys can look at, hopefully by the next meeting. And it might even make sense for us to just work together as a committee through the meetings and,
Yeah.
and go through it, rather than creating a subcommittee. But once we get there, we can figure out what we think is the best next step.
That sounds great.
Thank you, Danielle.
Yes,
Let me-
thank you.
Let me just say, I think this model is going to be immensely valuable because I think there are trends in our finances that have so far gone unnoticed by the town. And I think I'm a little bit concerned that this model hasn't been updated. because it makes me wonder, okay, if this is not what we're using to see what's going on in the town, what visibility do town officials have into like what's actually going on with their finances, if not this model?
That's a good question, and I don't have a great answer, but I know that, you know, during the budgeting process, there are other, you know, things that they would do, and I know Mike Guzzo had, you know, sheets upon sheets of data, but I don't know specifically what it is they do with the budgeting.
I mean,
At least when Greg's coming up with his budget.
I mean, in the absence of knowing that there's something else out there, I would suggest making this model a top priority for this committee, because this is visibility into our town, visibility that we otherwise, unless I hear otherwise, that we otherwise don't have.
Yeah. No, hopefully that was the goal. So hopefully we can make it work. All right. So moving on in our agenda, we were going to discuss liaison positions for this fiscal year to the other boards now that we are our full committee. So I just wanted to talk about that and see what people might be able to, would like to do. There's two that I definitely want to be sure we assign tonight, because they're, I know the budget subcommittee will be meeting soon, and we are to send 2 members to that. And the charter review committee, Peter, I don't know if you have an upcoming meeting, but we're supposed to have 2 members on that. So, but before we get into the details, there are a couple like that, the Green Meadow Building Committee, Charter Review Committee, and Budget Subcommittee, where we are charged with sending representatives, and that's something that we have to do. And then those representatives, you know, do go to the meetings to represent us. However, the rest of the ones we're going to discuss tonight, it's not, you know, if you volunteer to be the liaison to another type of committee, it's not the expectation that you have to go to every single one of their meetings. There's other ways that you can, you know, contact the chair, that you can make sure you keep up on the agendas, the minutes, you know, ask questions. If you know, we already volunteer quite a bit of our time coming to these meetings twice a month. And I know, you know, sometimes going to other meetings sounds like a tall order. So I just want to make that clear that, you know, there does not need to be an expectation that you go to every other meeting of these other committees. You're certainly welcome to as many as you want, but other than Budget Subcommittee, Charter Review Committee, and the Green Meadow Building Committee, because we do actually have to send members to those. Okay, Danielle?
So Alana, I'll volunteer to do the Charter Review Committee, and then we had talked about a liaison for the town planner. I'm open to doing either or both of those.
Okay. First of all, Peter, did you want to stay on Charter Review Committee?
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate
I'm
that.
not sure it makes sense to change.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like
I'm
you're
willing
sort
to
of toward
stay.
the end
Let
of,
me put it
you're-
that way.
it's sort of, what are we thinking, May? That the charter review is gonna be?
Yes, that is the
Okay.
goal.
Okay, so that's helpful context. So the goal for the Charter Review Committee, which we do every 10 years, is to review the charter and then bring the charter to annual town meeting for a vote to be updated. So the goal is that will be done by annual town meeting. So Peter is on it. Peter has been on it. He's actually been on it the last time there was a charter review, correct? So he's a good partner on that committee. So Danielle is interested. Does anybody else really jonesing for charter review? All right, then I am going to put Danielle on that, and I will let Dick Downey know that. Thank you, Danielle.
Bill Coleman.
Oh, sorry, Bill
Wait,
Coleman
Bill Coleman.
is the, right. Dick's on it, but Bill runs it, right?
Dick's not on it. I think he just comes.
Oh, he just comes. Okay. He always talks about it. I always thought he was, okay. So Bill Coleman, I'll let him know. Okay, and Katie, we had discussed last time that you were going to stay on the Green Meadow Building Committee.
Yes.
Okay, and then the other one that we have to send 2 members to for other meetings is the Budget Subcommittee. Jillian, you have previously been on that. Would you like to stay on it or would you like to hand it off?
As the committee likes, happy either way.
Okay. Is anybody else interested? Jillian, those meetings are like maybe once a month. Sometimes it sort of fluctuates, right? Is there a set time?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's about once a month. Is that right, Peter? Like,
Yeah,
sometimes
they're
more
generally once a
frequently as we're
month.
coming up.
The day fluctuates because we're trying to juggle so many people on other committees.
Right.
So, I mean, Mondays get bad because of FinCom, Tuesdays because of Select Board, and Thursdays because of School Committee. I think by default, it's often Wednesdays. Not locked in.
Okay. And Peter, sorry, I don't know why I was thinking Elliot was on Budget Subcommittee with Jillian. You were on Budget Subcommittee. Would you
Yes.
like to stay on Budget Subcommittee?
Yes,
Okay.
I would, but am willing to step aside. Just to throw out there,
Mhm.
I think I've raised this before here, and whoever's going to be on Budget Subcommittee, at least from my point of view, I would like them to at least be aware of this issue and perhaps, depending on what the committee thinks, have this mindset. I get a little concerned that Budget Subcommittee substitutes for flow of information to FinCom, and that the flow of information should be from the town administrator and the finance director directly to FinCom, and that too often it seemed to me that there's, Greg does a budget update to the Budget Subcommittee, and that we're supposed to echo it back to FinCom.
Mhm.
And the Budget Subcommittee is a fake committee. It doesn't exist in the charter. It shouldn't supplant any information coming directly to FinCom. And so I'm uncomfortable with the committee sometimes that, Greg acts like, oh, I updated Budget Subcommittee and you have representatives on Budget Subcommittee. I want the update from Greg, not from our member on Budget Subcommittee. So anyway, I don't know if Jillian feels that way or, what other members think. But
So I completely,
I just wanted to echo that.
I completely agree. There have been instances where information has gone to the Budget Subcommittee, but not to the FinCom, and that's, I agree. And frankly, I agree with Peter also. It's not the subcommittee's responsibility to communicate that. They should be communicating back to the FinCom, but I completely agree with Peter on this one.
Okay.
I would say, in my experience, because I've been on it for a bit, it used to be a bit more informal. It was sort of like each of the committees getting together and sort of talking about big picture problems or like concerns, things that are coming, just to make sort of, it was almost like a courtesy meeting, just to say, like, these things are coming up, you should be aware of this. And then they would be disseminated, through official channels. And I would say now it's starting to get a lot more formal. And, I would kind of agree with Peter that sometimes things get talked about there, and it's expected that each of the different boards or representatives bring them back to their respective committees. So I don't know if the other groups are also having similar concerns, but.
Okay.
I mean, the one I would point to is, the change to the school budget last year, just kind of showed up in the budget Greg was presenting somewhere around January 10th. And frankly, it wasn't highlighted even to budget subcommittee, but it's not like he ever came to FinCom and said, okay, I balanced the budget and I did it by cutting the school budget, which would have been the most straightforward way to portray that. And instead it was kind of this quiet thing. And all of a sudden we're at the February meeting and like, wait a minute, what happened to the number they were supposed to get? So I think that
Okay.
feeds a little bit into my thinking.
Okay.
But yes, I would like to stay on the budget subcommittee, but
Okay.
if there are other people eager to serve, then I'm willing to not do it.
Well, we've got several
Yeah,
more
I
to
would
come.
recommend if we're gonna have,
Sorry, go
yeah, I
ahead,
would
Jen.
recommend if we're gonna have Peter stay on the committee, that if someone else feels very strongly they'd like to try it, I could step down and pick up a different committee instead. Because I think, having his experience there is important.
Mhm.
Not saying I'm not experienced, but.
Right. Well, let's go through some of the other committees and see, what the other interests are, and then if we want to come back to sort of share the load and change budget subcommittee, we can do that. So the other ones, select board is going to be myself as the chair. I think that's pretty important to do. And I'm happy to continue there. Ken offered to stay on school committee liaison, right, Ken? Last time, okay. And then the other ones were the CPC, Community Preservation Committee, the CAPCOM, Capital Planning Committee, the Economic Development Committee, and the Master Plan Implementation Committee. The Master Plan Implementation Committee is one I don't think meets like super regularly. And the Capcom too, I'd have to check and see if they're meeting like on a very regular basis at this point. They just got up and running pretty much last fiscal year. So, but the CPC meets twice a month, Wednesday evenings, and the Economic Development Committee meets Wednesday mornings, I believe, once or twice a month.
So I'm happy to do the master plan implementation committee,
Okay.
unless somebody else has a burning desire. And by the way, I think it's really important that we do have a liaison with the town planner.
Oh, sorry. Yep, you're right. I had that
Which
one.
I think Danielle had said that she was interested in. I think that's really important because the planning board and, other committees are funneling development projects in through the planning department. And, what is coming up in terms of development and therefore revenues and what challenges that they have, often getting identified early on. So I do think that will be of increasing importance to the committee. So to our
Absolutely.
understanding.
Nope, you're absolutely right. And Bill Nemser, our town planner, is always so happy to have interest and disseminate information and whatnot. So I'm sure will be thrilled. So, okay, sorry, I lost my.
Alana, can you
List
briefly
here.
talk about the differences or
Mhm.
what the different committees focus on? So the Economic Development Committee and the Capital Planning Committee, what their main goals are?
Sure. The goal for the Capital Planning Committee is to have a good understanding of the capital needs of the town, things that we need to upgrade, purchase, all of our assets, all of, the things that we have to take care of or that we need to buy. And they go through and kind of have a running list of priority and try to help prioritize them because of course, for each individual department, their needs are their priority, but the Capcom with, talking with departments and trying to get a sort of big picture look at what they believe the top priorities are when you look at all of them together. Does that?
Yeah, no, that answers
Okay.
that. And then the Economic Development Committee.
The Economic Development Committee is one that I've
I can
sat in
that
on
as
some.
one. I was
Yeah,
the rep
Julian,
in the past.
yeah, you'd probably be better at it. Go for it.
So my understanding is that the committee, so I personally, because of my job, was not able to attend any of the meetings, but I did have, I did get updates for the minutes and things like that. I think the chair might have changed because I haven't heard anything in a while, but my understanding is that it's made up of business owners of a lot of the local businesses. And they sort of talk about things that impact them, like some of these, like I know that they circulated some of these, the green developments within them to get sort of feedback if those would be feasible about like the styrofoam and the plastic bags and stuff.
Okay.
I think they also talk a lot about like beautifying the downtown and like, grants and things that can be applied for those like such things
Okay.
to improve the business district.
Yeah, I think they were instrumental in getting that pamphlet out with like the map and the lists of the businesses too, right? Didn't they help with that?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay. And when does the cap plan committee meet?
I don't know that they have a set time like we do. So I would have to ask their chair about that.
If it fits, I would be interested in that.
Okay.
So I have a question of how the town planner liaison will work, because that sounds like that's a town employee and not a standing committee. So would there be regular meetings to attend, or would it be more of like an individual like liaison role?
Well, it could be to the planning board.
Okay.
But again, if those meetings are challenging, Bill Nemser as the town planner would certainly be happy to, keep anyone informed and let them know what's going on. So I think it could go either way.
So having been on the planning board, what I would say is, generally speaking, understanding what's coming before the planning board and making sure that you're getting communications about that is far more important than attending every single meeting. There's a lot of minutia that the planning board is going through. It's important stuff, but from a FinCom perspective, we're looking at sort of keeping an eye on development projects. I used to keep a list early on when I was chair. I used to keep a list of ongoing development projects so I could ask about them periodically, just to see where they were and what was delaying them or something like that. But those are going to become increasingly important to us.
So I guess my second question is, what roles do we currently have gaps in that are not currently filled by incumbents?
Capcom, CPC, Economic Development Committee, and the town planner / planning board.
So the CPC, as Alana well knows, there's a significant amount of money that is being recommended to town meeting voters for expenditures. And these are often for projects that, that are longer term. There are restrictions on them, on, what this spending is, but it's a very important source of money for the town. So given, Alana, I think, I'll just, give her a plug here. She stayed on CPC one more year beyond while she was chair. And I think, that would be a gap that'd be good to fill. I think Alana would agree.
Yeah, they have a good amount of stuff coming down. They just had a really great meeting with a sort of CPC guru from the state, and they learned a whole lot. And there's, definitely some changes and some accounting things, and there's some things going on with potentially with the golf course and how that was handled with CPC money. So I think there will be a good need for us to keep tabs on that. And
There's a lot of moving parts, and there are a lot of rules
Yeah.
there. And, frankly, that is something that would be good to have.
So one last question. Do they meet
Yep.
in the morning or in the afternoon?
the CPC meets at 7 usually PM
On Wednesdays.
Wednesdays, 2
All right.
Wednesdays a month.
Perfect. So I'll be able to attend the meetings, because I'm in a similar boat as Jillian. I am unable to attend morning meetings.
Yeah.
Because of the job. So
Mhm.
I will volunteer for CPC.
Okay.
And you said the other two were the town planner and
No,
I think Danielle is town planner.
yeah.
We're gonna,
all right. So yeah, what were the list of ones that don't have
So-
incumbents in?
the capital planning committee
Okay.
would be another one, and they usually meet in the evenings, I think, but maybe not.
I'd be open to that one.
And then the economic development committee.
And the economic development committee is the morning.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the
Right.
morning one.
All right. So I may defer to members who are able to actually attend the meetings
Mhm.
for that one. And Jillian, if you want the capital planning committee, it's yours, and I'll fill whatever gap is remaining, although the preference would be for
For an evening, okay.
for an evening meeting, so I'm
Yep.
actually able to attend.
I think Katie volunteered for the
Yeah.
Capcom too.
Right.
Oh.
So,
Can I
So,
just
right. Yep.
add a word on Economic Development Committee?
Yeah.
Which, Jillian talks some about the current businesses. I think there's also a vision of that committee as, trying to figure out where we can do more. It's from a FinCom point of view, I'd put it as to raise more revenue, to have more, particularly commercial development, whether it's filling spaces downtown or working on the development likely of Powder Mill Road as kind of an underutilized commercial stretch. So there's actually some good stuff with that committee, even if you can't attend.
Peter, does the MBA, the Maynard Business Alliance, play a role in that committee, or do they?
not
I
officially.
think that's a different group.
Okay.
But
I think there's some
Similar
crossover.
goals,
There's
yeah.
definitely crossover, but yeah, but they're a different, generally a different body,
Right.
because
I
the
mean-
MBA has no governmental affiliation in
Right.
any way.
Right.
I mean, is it generally in the liaison roles? Are we generally just listening to these meetings? Are we giving feedback?
It sort of depends on which committee you're on. I would say for the most part, we are, well, certainly like budget subcommittee, we are very much participants. But for the
No,
others,
actually, we're not.
well, we can't vote. That's right. To be
We
clear,
can't vote
we're not
so
allowed to vote.
on any committee that you're on. We
Yeah.
can't vote on anything. We have to be
Any-
impartial.
Correct. Technically, for the other ones, we're not on the committees at all. We are just there to be a helpful, observer. I certainly tried to impart some knowledge and answer questions at CPC if asked, or if if I knew of something that might be helpful, a piece of information that, in something they were talking about, but mostly, I watched and listened.
So something that may be feasible if no one's able to attend the economic planning meeting because it's in the morning,
Yeah.
maybe I'll take that on as a liaison, and something I would make a request to the chairs if they could actually record their meetings and post them, because then I could just sit back and listen in the afternoon.
Right. They do usually meet, or I mean, not during COVID times, but they generally meet at town hall. I don't know. I think they're in the Gianotis room. So I don't know what the capability of recording would be, but it's certainly something you could ask.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it on and I'll ask to see if they could record the meetings as a courtesy to us. And that way I could just sit and listen like I do,
Right.
like I did as a private citizen with all the other meetings, like
Right.
sitting and watching on YouTube. Actually, if
Sure.
they put it on YouTube, that would be best, because then I could watch it at 2 times speed.
Right. That is helpful.
And save some time.
And then, so just so I know I have all of these written. Katie, did you say you wanted to do Capcom?
Yes.
Okay.
I just need to verify which night it is, but
Right.
as long as it's not a Monday or Tuesday, because the Green Meadow building is usually Tuesday
Yep.
lately.
Yep.
Then I can do it.
Yeah, what I can do with this list, for those that are new or not, returning members for liaison to these committees, I can do a quick, little email introduction to their chair and say, Katie's going to join and Kevin's going to be our liaison. Please, copy them on pertinent emails and whatnot.
Yeah, I guess the one
You
thing
can
I would
also
add,
find-
Oh.
On the town of Maynard website, if you go under
Yeah.
government and then you click on committees, like at the very top, it'll list all the committees and it sort of says what their goals and role are and how often they meet and stuff,
Okay.
Yeah.
and like
Thank
the
you.
old minutes and agendas.
Some of them are better than others, but yeah.
the determining factor on what your role is whether you're on there as a member of the committee or as a liaison. So for the Green Meadow School Building Committee, I believe that the FinCom member is an actual member of the committee,
Yes.
correct, Alana?
Yes.
That is
And so
correct.
as
We can't
so-
vote, but we are a member.
Yeah.
Correct. So you can actively participate, you can provide your perspective. You don't have to be silent. You can advocate for a particular viewpoint. You just can't vote on that. I think the one exception, Peter would know this, is I believe the Charter Review Committee, isn't the Charter Review Committee the one where we
Yes.
can vote? And
Yes,
so,
exactly.
so we're actually allowed to vote. So Peter and Danielle would be members, but we're actually allowed to vote on the Charter Review Committee. The other ones like the Select Board, School Committee, Town Planner, Capcom, et cetera, you're not members, you're just liaisons. So you're there to gather information, provide information back and so forth. So some of these, you're an active member of the committee. And if you're a named member, then you can participate. It's not to say that you can't say things. I mean, I have been known to say things at school committee meeting. But typically, I'm probably a little bit more reserved in that than one where I was an active committee member.
Right. And you're also, bound to whatever rules that committee has and acknowledge, asking to the chair, not just saying what, your piece at any time because you're not a member, that sort of thing. And some of them
And
are
is
a little
there
more informal
school-
than others. Go
Is
ahead,
there a
Jillian.
separate school building committee, or that already has an assigned member on it?
Yeah, that's
representative.
Katie's on that, the Green Meadow Building Committee. Yeah. And that's an actual active member that we have. Okay. That's great. I will, I'll write up the list that I have, just in case others are, want to make sure they keep track of who's doing what or want to ask anything. And again, I'll do some email introductions to the chairs of those committees to let them know. So that's great. Moving on.
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, can I?
Yep.
Just the other liaisons we've sometimes had, and, we can decide whether we want, or, if anybody has interest,
Okay.
would be DPW and maybe, so higher priority in my mind would be DPW, and maybe second priority would be public safety.
Mhm.
And, that really would be, outreach to department heads or chiefs. Just someone they can come to on FinCom, and someone who, it might have a conversation once a month with someone there to say what's going on. Is there any issues with the budget? What are your future needs? I don't think we have to fill it,
Right.
but if someone had a burning interest in either of those areas, we've sometimes done that also. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do think Justin and I are in pretty good communication at this point.
Right, so maybe you're kind of filling that role. And
Yeah, I hadn't really
that's
thought of
fine.
it like that, but that's sort of and then the public safety, I mean, certainly there's been
Yeah.
a good amount of change for the fire department lately, and so that's also something, as we talk about, town meeting and special town meeting, we often have the department heads come in when they're in budget. So we usually have them in to meetings at least once a year, or two, or twice, which is helpful.
Yeah, and if you're doing with DPW, I see that as
Yeah.
the higher priority than public safety.
Yeah, there's always a lot going on, especially now with our water and such.
I also feel like the chair is kind of the natural fit for those department head liaison. Not to put any more work
Yeah.
on you, Alana. If you
No.
feel like it's too much, like feel free to delegate. But I feel like
Yeah.
the chair, by virtue of their position, is a natural fit for like the town employee liaisons and like those things that can happen via email.
Actually, you just gave me the perfect segue, Kevin, for something that I discussed with Greg and I wanted to say at our meeting today, which is if anyone needs resources from town employees, from department heads, if you need information, if you need, things from them, if you could please ask me with the request, send me the email with the request, and I will then go to them and with it and get back to you. It's just in order to make sure that, town employees' time is a known thing, and how much we're going to them and whatnot. I'm sort of on keeping track and tabs on our use of town employee time. We have some amazing town employees that would gladly give us anything we wanted. It's not that, it's just, to be respectful of their time and to know how much of their time we're taking. It's just better if they're not getting 7 emails, on any particular subject. So if you have any requests of town meeting or of town employees, just send it to me and I will forward it on and get it back to you.
So the one committee I didn't hear mentioned was Bylaws Committee.
Oh, yeah. That's one that's probably easy to keep tabs on, with some communication with their chair, which is currently Bill Coleman. They move at kind of I don't want to say they move at a slow pace. That sounds terrible, but like bylaws usually take time to get written and approved and move through the system, et cetera. So it's not usually one that you really have to go to every meeting and such. A lot of it is formatting questions, or they're just, you know, getting things set. But Bill would definitely be able to help any liaison keep tabs on what they're working on, and if any of them have serious financial implications. He's usually a very good, easy communicator. So.
If there was no meetings to go to, I would happily be a communicator for that group, but
Okay.
If there are actual meetings to attend, 3 would probably be too many, but
Yeah.
but if I didn't have to, I would be very interested in those topics, so.
Sure. I mean, I think that would be fine if you just, and again, I'd have to go look at their page and see if there are minutes that are up to date that you could just look at, but Bill could certainly tell you what's going on, and if he had any major concerns to bring. So why don't we start there, Katie? And then
All right, sounds good.
Again, if it seems like a burden, if it seems, and for
Yeah.
anybody else, if, you know, this is,
Much.
these are not set in stone. If you're finding this to be too much and you'd like to, you know, hand it off, that's totally fine. Just come back and let us know.
Sounds good.
Okay. Great. All right. I think we're all set with liaisons, unless anyone has anything else to say for those. Let me go ahead and share my screen for a second. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is preliminary special town meeting planning, because it's been a minute. So it's time for another town meeting. So this is the draft timeline. The administrative assistant, Becky Mosca, makes these. Oh, this is the department head one. Hold on, here's the full schedule. There we go. So as you can see, oh, I'm sorry, this must be an old one. My apologies. We had this changed, because as you can see, the FinCom recommendations were initially put before the citizens petitions were even required to be submitted. So we have to have another one that Becky did fix it. I must be looking at an old one. Let me see if I can find it. But I had her push the FinCom recommendations to September 26th, that Monday, so that we may have at least a chance of getting them in for them. Give me 1 second. Nope, that's still the old one. All right, I'm gonna have to go and find, I thought she had sent it to me. But anyway, regardless, that puts, if we're looking at calendars and we do a little backtrack, the town meeting is October 24th, Monday. And our recommendations are due September 26th, which leaves us with our public hearing on Monday, October 17th, the Monday before town meeting. And 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings for prior to having our comments in at this point, which is not a lot, especially since we haven't seen any actual articles yet. But let me also share Greg's potential list of articles, and we can kind of just take a look at what may be coming at us here. So special town meeting is generally necessary to call for budgetary reasons. There's often some changes after we get the state budget that need to be made. And special town meeting is not required to happen every year by charter, but generally speaking, we have been in a pattern of always having a fall special town meeting. And so the budget amendment, that's the big one. That's usually the reason we need to call a special town meeting. And then it looks like we've got some things, speaking of DPW, phase 2, well 4A borrowing, enterprise fund allocations, solid waste contract amendment, that may or may not be necessary at this point. Some year-end reports, I can ask, that'll be Lori. The bylaw for fire prevention and safety, so that's something, Katie, after an introduction to Bill, you can ask him about that, and that's, again, something we're probably going to want to talk to the fire chief about. We can have him in for a meeting. And then there's a couple other planning board bylaw amendments here. So that's going to be you too, Katie. Probably. Or if not Katie, then Danielle as well might be in on some of those. And then disposition of 1 Summer Street, that's the old fire station site. Greg is being very optimistic that that will be in any way ready to get rid of, but he certainly would like to have it off the town's plate as soon as possible, but I don't know that that'll be ready by September. So that's what we're looking at. There's always, you know, there may be some citizens petitions. We don't know yet. So, but hopefully this, you know, this doesn't look too bad. Doesn't look too heavy. I feel like last year's STM was pretty heavy. So I think this one is not so bad. So part of why I wanted to bring this up this evening is for our planning purposes for our next, you know, really only a couple months of meetings, and see how many guests we may need to ask to talk about these. So I see that, you know, fire department, bylaw, DPW director, probably Bill or the chair of the planning board. So that's a couple meetings at least.
Can I ask, do you have any idea what the amend financial reports year end is? I've never seen an article like that. I'm not clear why town meeting action is needed.
I will ask because it did not come up the last time I spoke with Lori. So let me ask her.
Alana, it's buried in one of the emails that you forwarded.
Oh, is it? Oh, good.
Yeah, I have it up if you want me to just read it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'll
It
go
says,
back.
1, to amend the financial reporting that we just passed to include a year-end report. We had it removed from the initial bylaw since what we had stated as a triggering milestone didn't apply.
Sorry, so this is
Oh, right.
amending the financial reports bylaw.
Yeah.
That we just did. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, not the
okay.
reports themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Okay.
That's a lot less scary sounding. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm curious, what information do we have on the solid waste contract amendment?
I can ask, what I'll do tomorrow is send emails to the departments in charge of these and ask them for some more information that I can pass on to us. The solid waste, I know there's been, there were some grant opportunities, perhaps. There's been some talk about changing to bags or, or bins like we have for the recycling. The way that we do it currently with the stickers is kind of, at this point, not one that a lot of, I think, waste management companies still do or deal with. It's kind of hard for them to, check everybody's bags when your, bin is closed. It's kind of a nightmare, I think. So they're looking to get away from that.
That
Is my
would be a welcome
understanding.
development.
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause
There's
even I could tell you
actually,
it's
if you're curious about it, Kevin, if you go back, I can't tell you what date, but if you go back and just look at the agendas for select board, Justin has given a couple preliminary presentations on this to select board. So if you look for that, you might be able to just zoom in on those at some of their YouTube recordings.
yes.
And-
the-
Yeah.
Thank goodness for YouTube. But also, do you recall if this update was prior or after the annual town meeting? Because I was attending the ones where he gave the update prior
Oh.
to annual town meeting.
Oh, it might have been prior. I don't think it. Yeah, so you maybe have already seen it. Because I do think it was before annual town meeting.
Because I mean, I'll be the first to say the stickers are financially wasteful. They result in inefficiencies on the disposal front because, again, you have to pay guys to get out of the truck, check
Right.
the stickers.
Yeah,
and
no,
then-
I'm sure that Harvey doesn't like it. So
Alana, if it's the same presentation you're talking about, it's on the DPW site too. I saw it
Oh,
being
right.
passed around a while ago.
thank you, Danielle. You're right. Thank you.
And it looks like it does go over like the stickers and alternate.
Alternate plans. Yeah. Mhm.
What
And
site
I
was
think
that?
there was talk of the DPW site, Kevin.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I think there was also talk of forming maybe a subgroup, like a task force about solid waste as well, but I don't know. So I'll ask Justin about it. I'll get his take on it.
I recall that conversation. I recall that discussion happening at a meeting prior to annual town meeting.
Okay.
So
But yeah.
when are they expecting to have information to us to start reviewing?
So the deadline for draft warrants is the end of August, August 29th. Which leaves us, I mean, hopefully we'll have them, that August 29th is a Monday. I certainly hope it'd be great if we had them by Friday so we could actually look at them all by Monday. And that,
So we
Based-
we won't be looking at these. We won't be looking at these in August at all.
sorry, unless we, right, with our schedule, no, we wouldn't see them. We wouldn't see them in August unless we want to shift our meetings a little bit to accommodate. Because we have Labor Day is September 5th.
Well, so what it looks like to me is you know, it sounds as though we may get some sprinkled to us
Mhm.
over the course of August, but if the deadline isn't until August 29th, then we're likely to have only 2 meetings on the 12th and the 26th.
Yep.
Because the 26th is actually a little dicey even because the select board is going to approve the warrant and they've got to have it ahead of time. So, I don't know when, literally if you did the final changes, they still wouldn't have the warrant in time for them to approve on the 27th. So it's just,
I think the reason that that's okay is because our comments aren't like something that they approve, like that they need to have read in depth and approve. It's really the articles. So if I give her the if we get as many as we can get on the 26th to her, she plugs those in. But they would probably be looking at the warrant without our comments, I would
And then-
imagine, a
and then
little bit ahead of time.
and then presumably you would have them, so it goes to be printed on the 30th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, it's short. It's really short for special town meeting because the way that it's written in the charter for how long things, citizens petitions particularly it's only 30 days ahead of the meeting that they have to be in. So it's a very short timeline to get stuff turned around.
But on some of these, you'd think there's language already there. Part of me thinks, I don't know, Greg or Becky or who's ever drafting the language says,
Mhm.
oh, it's due this day. So, if they know what they want to do about the DPW or, some of the other ones,
Mhm.
they should just be putting out language. At least we can start looking at stuff.
Yep. Agreed.
So, kind of an
I can-
obvious thing to say, but.
Nope. Yep. I can ask.
So we're meeting on the 8th and 15th of August, the 12th and the 26th, and the 26th is when the recommendations would have to be
Right.
finalized that are going to go into the printed warrant.
Mhm.
And then we have the 10th, where, presumably if we have any recommendations after the 26th, which would be the 10th.
That's Indigenous Peoples' Day, though. So Monday, the 10th is out.
Just for my note taking, I think Ken, you said the 8th and the 15th. Is that the 8th and the 22nd?
Sorry, yes.
Okay,
8th and 22nd of August.
okay.
Although, would we consider pushing the 22nd to be the 29th of August, just with the idea we'd have more final material by then?
That is a good suggestion, I would say. Does anyone have schedule conflicts for August 29th?
No. It's better than the 22nd for me.
Yeah, the 22nd, I'm out of town, so 29th is certainly better.
Okay. Anyone can't make it on the 29th of August? Then I would suggest that we move our August 22nd meeting to August 29th. Okay. And while we're talking about August, I am out of the country. Actually, I will be in Canada for August 8th. So what we need to decide this evening is would someone, or Jillian presumably as the vice chair, I can set up a meeting, I can post an agenda and all of that. If you all would like to have one on the 8th.
And can I just, not that we couldn't function without you, Alana, but it would be
I
a
know.
big miss. Any thought we should just, can we move that to the 15th then?
You could, I won't be back yet.
I will be
Okay.
gone the
Okay.
15th as well.
Okay, all right, just asking.
Yeah, no.
I'll be gone also on the 15th, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So is there burning desire and or need for an August 8th meeting, or should we say that we are not meeting August 8th?
Unless we have agenda items, I would suggest that we not meet.
Yeah.
And that
If
will
we-
give Danielle lots of Collins planning time.
Oh, yeah. Because, right, if we were to have articles by then that you all could start discussing, I would say go for it, but I don't know that we will, so.
I am unmuted. My only thought, and it would, I don't want to make Danielle commit to anything she doesn't want to, but and you may not want to miss the meeting, but it might be an opportunity if we don't have much of an other agenda, even to
Mhm.
just spend an hour with the committee as a whole, working through the model in some detail. We're quickly going to hit town meeting stuff and not be able to do that at future meetings, I think. I don't want to exclude you from that, Alana.
Right.
But you may be already kind of familiar with it, or, so anyway, I'd throw it out there as, but it would depend on Danielle wanting to do it. Which I don't want to
Right.
push that on anybody.
I mean, I'll defer to what everyone wants to do. I can let you know how it goes when I work on it later this week and see what kind of shape I think it'll be in, if that makes more sense.
Sure. Do you want to keep us updated? And so as long as I know, let's see, the meeting's on the 8th.
I leave at like 6 in the morning be at the airport at 6 in the morning on the 9th. But if it's only an hour on the 8th, I think I'll be okay. So depends the length of time we go, but I'd be down for an hour or so.
So realistically, given that is our next meeting, we need to set the date and agenda for that. So if we don't have one,
Yeah, and I'm perfectly happy to skip a meeting in the summer too. So
Yeah.
I don't want to push it, but
Yeah, that would probably be my inclination, is to push it, and hope that we will have some time to spend with that.
okay.
Right after special town meeting. I mean, hopefully we'll have some time in between, but we most definitely will dive into that prior to, budget season really being at a head.
so I'm not understanding. So we are canceling or we're keeping it?
I would say cancel the 8th and give Danielle some more time.
So
that
that puts
would-
our next one at the 22nd.
Next one would be the
With the
22nd.
Are we keeping the 22nd too, or are we pushing the 22nd
20
meeting to the
29th.
29th?
29th.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our next meeting will be Monday, August 29th. And then Labor Day is the 5th. We will meet again September 12th. And then September 26th.
Are we still going to get paid if we take a month off?
It's cool. I worked it out.
Our budget
Okay,
is that big.
And then our public meeting for special town meeting will be Monday, October 17th. And then town meeting is the 24th.
And so there won't be any meeting, obviously, on the 24th. Because we're moving it up 1 week.
Correct,
Yep.
sorry. Yep, you're right. Thank you for clarifying that, Ken. Yes.
So it's just town meeting the 24th.
So generally, we would meet it as the second and fourth. It would be the 10th, which is Indigenous Peoples' Day, and the 24th for the month of October. Because it's Indigenous Peoples' Day, we won't meet that day. And town meeting is October 24th when we would normally meet. So so we will push our meeting to the 17th and have that be our public meeting, public hearing for town meeting. So we still will all be together and meet twice in October, but it will be the 17th and then town meeting on the 24th.
All right,
Do
so,
we want to, oh, sorry, Ken.
no, go ahead.
Do we want to potentially not reserve the day, but put on the list that we might want to meet October 3rd?
It is
And,
possible.
purely town meeting dependent.
Yes, if we do not have all of our comments done by the 26th, we can, if depending on what's going on, if there's only a few, we can tack that on to the 17th with the public meeting, or we could have a meeting on the 3rd if we feel like there's still a lot to do. So that is a good point. So let's put that, just keep an eye on the fact that we may need to add a meeting October 3rd.
Do you know, are there state budget numbers out, and do we know how much money we're talking about in changes to state aid?
So far, most of what I've heard has been good news. So I have not seen, I'm hoping the budget subcommittee meeting that's coming up, right? Do you guys have one scheduled? I thought you did, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. I have to go check the town.
Okay,
website.
I thought I saw, but now I can't remember what day I thought I saw it.
Nothing posted yet.
Okay,
I forget what we said as the next one. And I haven't
I
seen
have to
it.
go-
Greg usually starts
Okay.
sending materials, so it's
Right.
obviously not this week.
right. But anyway, hopefully, we'll get some updates on what he's thinking. I can see the select board meetings tomorrow. Can see if he mentions.
But I think I know there's a final budget on the governor's desk. So
Yeah. So he may
I think
be
there is, yeah.
waiting for the final signature on it.
Yep.
But so far, I think there was some good news for the schools and such. So that's great. I'm hopeful.
But the schools isn't just schools. But yeah. I mean, traditionally, just because there's an increase in school aid doesn't mean it all goes to the schools. It's an increase in state aid to the town that then has to be allocated somewhere.
Right, but there is some that's specifically going, I believe there was an increase in circuit breaker. So some of the ones that are school specific, I believe there is going to be some increase in, which is
Oh,
good.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, so I think, does anybody have any questions about,
So I
special
just
town
want to
meeting?
make sure that
Yep.
we're
Yep.
understanding. So the 8th is canceled. The
Mhm.
29th is our next meeting. We'd
yes,
have one on the 12th and the 26th, the 26th being when our recommendations are due.
yes.
We have a possible meeting on the 3rd if we need it.
Mhm.
The meeting on the 10th is canceled. And or would be moved up to the 3rd if we need it.
Mhm.
And then we have a public hearing on the 24th, on the 17th, and
Yep.
special town meeting on the 24th,
Correct. Yep.
and then Halloween on the 31st.
Woohoo. Okay, any other questions on special town meeting right now? Great. Then we will move on to our routine agenda items and the approval of our minutes. Let me bring those up. Thank you, Katie, for these.
I meant to say thank you for helping with the reserve fund transfer specifics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I did want to say that I think these were very very good. The amount of detail and the organization I thought was right on the money for these.
It's because I did it 2 weeks after and not a month after. It helped.
And so, yeah, so these now have at the bottom, the reserve fund transfers written out, so we know where we're at.
So I'll make a motion, we accept the minutes for July 11th.
Okay, do I have a second?
I will
I sec-
second the motion. Oh.
Okay. And then we will do, or any further comments or corrections?
Question on number 11, should we put something in to indicate that it was confirmed to us that the select board does have authority to execute a lease, something along those lines?
That was confirmed to us after the meeting, so I don't think we need to put it in the minutes. That would be my thought on it. I
Okay.
suppose we could.
Yeah, it just
as an-
felt like it
but-
was, sorry, it felt like it was
Yep.
skewing toward, I know Ken made comments that we should have town meeting voters understand what we're doing, but we don't really address in here that technically they don't have to bring it before a town meeting.
So I think Alana is correct that, you know, if so, you know, we can certainly put that discussion in the minutes for, you know, this meeting,
Mhm.
but you wouldn't put those in the minutes for last meeting.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can put those for this meeting in the updates section.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that's a good point.
You repeat those updates.
Yeah, we will. We'll do the vote for this and then I'll touch on it when I do chair update. Yeah. Okay, any further comments or discussion? If not, I will call for a vote on these minutes. All right. Kevin,
I vote in favor.
Ken,
Yes,
Danielle,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Jillian,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, updates, my updates. So I will say that we got confirmation back from Greg and town council via email concerning the lease for the art space, what we call the art space building, Summer Street. I'm forgetting the number right now. That it is, as long as it is under 30 years, I believe it is, that is up to the select board to negotiate. And let's see, other than that, I think I've gone over most of what I've worked on this week with you all already. Do other members have updates for the group? Ken, I see your hand, go for it.
yeah, so I'll just say, just because they can do that on their own authority, doesn't mean that they should be doing that. You know, they're sitting there making decisions on the rental of a property. And yes, it's done in open meeting and so forth, but again, there's a a subsidy that's being put into this, and I went through it last time, so I won't do it again. But I realize that they can do it, but that doesn't mean they should.
Other updates from members?
I'm wondering if
Mhm.
on the topic of art space, I'm wondering if this is something that we should investigate the books on, investigate the RFP, and possibly if Ken feels very strongly about it, and I would go along with it, well, put out a report to the town meeting voters regarding this particular lease.
The I'm sure I could forward along the RFP. So I will do that. Any other thoughts on that from other committee members?
Do we know when the Board of Selectmen is likely to act on this?
I did ask Greg that because of our conversation at our last meeting, and I believe it was in an executive session, maybe at their last meeting or coming up at this current meeting. I don't know that like a voting, like here's the way we're going, but I know it is definitely going, this is not, I asked him, I said, is this months down the road? Is this like, where are we at? And it's more like weeks down the road, I think, than months.
So I'm not sure off the top of my head if I share their concerns, and I kind of place a pretty high value on art space, but it certainly would be appropriate, if it's the will of the committee. I mean, individual members can do as they like in terms of reaching out to the Board of Selectmen, or I'm sorry, the Select Board. But, we could also, someone could put forward a motion that we, as a committee, officially communicate to the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, that we would like them to go slow on this, and that we think there are some real issues here that need to be considered. And we would hate to, put out a report after the fact, for instance, when it, Kevin and Ken are correct. There, may be some real issues here, and, certainly is within our purview to look at it. And that, they're just simply as, we're concerned there may be missed financial opportunities for the town.
Is it within our purview to look at a contract under negotiation? I don't think so.
It's within our purview to do anything we want.
Okay.
I
mean, I know it's
traditionally
within
take a
our
very
purview to look at any
broad-
books, but I don't know about contracts that
We
are
can-
still in negotiation.
I
can ask.
Again, I would defer to the committee on this, but
Okay,
I take
okay.
a very broad view on our powers, and we can comment and do anything we want. I mean, that's why we're here, to be a check on other things.
And more particularly to represent the interest of town meeting voters, and town meeting voters are not being provided, the information on this. So, I'm not sure that it's within our purview to sit there and say to the to the Select Board what action they should take or not. We can, but I do agree with Peter. We have the responsibility on behalf of town meeting voters that if there are financial implications, we can move forward and ask to see the financial details of of something. And if they want to move forward, then they can move forward, and we move forward with our investigation, and maybe that's after the fact. Or maybe the select board makes a decision that, well, if there are concerns here and there is going to be a report coming out, maybe we ought to wait. I understand the reluctance to go into this, but there's a significant amount of money. I don't know what it is, but there's a significant amount of money that we pay in terms of subsidy for the use of this, as contrasted with other uses. And there's not an analysis being done. And that's what I would propose, that, as a FinCom, we have the responsibility of town meeting voters saying, there is a lease of this property. And do you realize that as a town, you're giving up X number of dollars in revenue? So.
Right. I do believe that there have been, discussions about what you're, certainly what you're talking about in their executive sessions concerning, like, it's not just we go ahead and do another lease for, I think it was a very low amount of money or whatever, or there's a lot of option in there, and I'm sure that's what they're discussing. So I'm happy to reach out.
I would submit that the negotiation of a lease is a proper use of executive session. The review of an appraisal on making a decision on whether to lease or not isn't a correct use of executive session. And that's the problem here, is that this is all happening in executive session rather than the decision. So basically you would sit there and say, the decision on taking a look at the appraisal and saying, okay, we're going to go with the lease. At that point, then you could go into executive session to negotiate the specific terms of that lease, which then gets voted on in an open meeting. But the only appropriate use of executive session is negotiation of the lease, not the review of appraisals and stuff like that.
Danielle, go ahead. You have your hand raised.
I just want to say, I think it's worth looking into. I think, Ken, you bring up good points, and I was shocked to see how little their lease is, like the dollar amount, to the point that Lana, I emailed you because I thought I was reading it wrong. Yeah. So I think that's something that the average, town meeting voter probably is not aware of. So while we might not be able to do much with a contract currently under negotiation, I'm sure that we can look at prior contracts and, to Ken's point, appraisals, because the only use is not necessarily a lease. And I know that Greg mentioned that they were the only ones who responded to the proposal for a lease, but there was a decision made to limit it only to leases.
I would just throw in, I kind of get what Ken is saying, that, we can't tell the Board of Selectmen what to do, but I think we're free to make a recommendation. And if we think this is going down the wrong path and they're about to do this lease that we don't think they should do, I would much rather, and I'm not sure I think that, but whatever, that, if as a committee, we think that, I'd much rather say so up front, as opposed to, issuing a report 6 months from now that we think they messed up. I'd rather be in front and say, we think you should put the brakes on this because we think there are some real issues here.
One thing we should also consider too is Jamie Eldridge secured funding for a renovation there. So we should just probably make sure anything we do doesn't necessarily jeopardize that, unless we feel strongly enough.
Well, it would if you sold the property to a developer, then there would be no need for and we can then send the money back to the Massachusetts taxpayers, instead of having it being used for renovation.
Yeah, I guess where I'm going is, if we were to go down this path and ultimately still end up leasing to Art Space, but potentially have delayed it because of our inquiries. I just would like to be aware if there's any impact to their potential to
Sure.
get funding.
So would it make sense, and I don't mean to cut off the conversation, but to, as a sense of the committee without some formal vote, ask Alana to, further inquire of the town administrator, when is action from the Board of Selectmen or it's the Select Board likely, and kind of communicate that we have some concerns and we want to make sure they're not acting hastily, and that there should be at least public discussion of the trade-offs of, did we consider developing it for housing? How much money would that be? Maybe Jamie Eldridge got $2 million to renovate it, and that outweighs any, tax money we'd get in the future. Or, maybe they are putting some dollar figure on having Maynard remain as an artist community. Whatever it is, that there should be some public discussion at a select board meeting
Okay.
that, people can then weigh in on. And that absent that, we have serious concerns about them going forward with the lease.
So I think, I think that we could also put that in the form of a formal motion to examine alternatives, which would include sale of the building, to look at, the various trade-offs with an eye towards understanding what the maximum benefit to the town would be. And if the maximum benefit qualitatively and quantitatively is to leave it as a lease to art space, then so be it. The town has now done that in an open discussion. But if on the other hand, we take a look at this and we see that potential revenues from sale of the building would be significantly higher than,
Right.
so.
One thing to keep in mind too, just as we're talking about this building, is just the zoning that it's in too. Is this, this wouldn't be something when we're talking about revenue sources and not having a lot of commercial real estate available to the town. I do not believe that this would be something that could be turned into like a Target because of where it's zoned.
No, it's zoned
throwing that.
resident, it's
Right.
zoned residential, so
Right.
the only
So-
appropriate use without a change of zoning
Right.
would be residential.
Yep.
And we've got plenty of commercial space.
We have vacant commercial
Do
space.
we,
Yeah.
do we know
Go
if the EDC has weighed in on this lease, or is that not their purview?
I do not know, but I will ask.
Question, what does EDC stand for?
Economic
Economic-
Development Committee.
Okay, so as their liaison, maybe that's something I should reach out on and ask them. Or if you want to do it,
Yeah.
Alana, I don't want to steal your thunder at all.
No, that's okay. I'll do an intro email for the liaisons and and maybe then you can ask them straight away about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to be sure that I know what is being asked, I will approach Greg and potentially the chair of the select board as well, or just go through Greg would be the proper channel.
So I'm willing to put forward a motion and have it put in the form of a motion that's voted on by the finance committee, if that's what the finance committee would do. As I said, I'd like to, the motion would be along the lines of recommending an open discussion to examine alternatives and the various trade-offs to find out what would be the maximum benefit to the town. And those, we would examine alternatives, including the sale of the building.
You would have a second for that motion from me.
And
So I guess I'm asking is, are we looking to put forward as a committee a formal motion, or, are we, still going to be asking questions?
Well, the motion for recommend, I just want to make sure I understand the motion. For recommending open discussion between ourselves and the select board, or at a select, we want the select board to have a discussion at one of their meetings, or would the motion be something like asking to see, for example,
So-
the appraisal?
So to answer your question, I don't know that I'm necessarily asking for an open discussion between the select board and the FinCom. What
Okay,
I'm asking is for an open discussion within the select board, which that they're not doing because they're doing it in executive session. And I would say have an open discussion to examine alternatives, which would include sale of the building. Okay, looking at the trade-offs and making a decision based on the maximum benefit of the town. And I'm fine with the idea that this would be a combined qualitative and quantitative assessment. I mean, I realize that, there are some aspects of art space that, can't be measured. And the town might sit there and say, we want art space so much, we're willing to do this. Or it may be that if we took a look at the alternatives, we'd say, it'd be better to move them into the mill someplace and sell that building. But that open discussion to explore alternatives and a fuller set of alternatives beyond just leasing that would include
Okay.
sale, that's what's not happening. And so if the select board wants to do that, that's fine. I think I would say, again, I'm not making a motion here at this point. I'm trying to get a sense of the committee, whether they want to move forward with a formal motion or, move informally through informal channels. But, whether it's done through a formal motion or informally, I think we need to sit there and say there's got to be an open discussion to explore alternatives, which includes sale of the building, that would, look at the trade-offs, and it would, lead to a maximum benefit, to the town, instead of us continuing to subsidize it.
I think our oversight responsibilities, and especially what you said, Ken, about the executive session, the proper use of the executive session, I think our oversight responsibilities compels us to make a formal motion. Not only that, but to also show that we are taking our oversight responsibilities seriously.
So that's fine. That's 2 members so far, but I guess, there's 5 others that I'd, be interested.
The way you just phrased that, Ken, as endorsing a open discussion at the select board meeting, I think I could support that. Just for reference for the committee, I would point out, so we don't have another meeting until August 29th. So if we went the informal route and didn't like it, we may be in a position where we don't get a chance to do a formal motion if somehow we don't like the result of informal. And then I like Ken's idea of an open discussion at the select board meeting more than any idea of us doing a report, just because of the amount of work that's involved with that, the fact that we're not meeting for another month, that there may be a more timely thing that needs to happen. So I'm putting those out for consideration also.
Okay. And also, just for clarifying with this motion, should we vote to approve it, then what I do is send a formal notice of this motion to Greg and the chair of the select board?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't mean to cut off comments from other committee members. I think Ken is still looking for feedback.
I mean, the motion is that we recommend that they do this, right? It's not,
Yep.
it's not a demand for any, like, I guess I'm fine with it because it's a motion to say, we think you should do this because we have concerns. Now, they could say, okay, thank you for that. We're not going to, in which case, then I guess we could go back and formally ask for documents and information and things of that nature. Right?
Correct.
Yeah,
We could,
so,
absolutely. We
yeah,
can do it
so,
even if they do it.
so I feel comfortable moving forward with the motion as presented.
So I'm just typing
I
something up.
agree.
I'm-
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Ken.
No, I'm just typing something up here for us to take a look at and
Okay.
Jillian, are you?
Any thoughts?
I would say, I think there are things that they do discuss in executive session, obviously, like salaries and other things like that. And, increases and who they're going to hire and not hire. So I don't know if I necessarily agree that this is an inappropriate use of executive session. But I mean, I think I would be very much interested to understand, because maybe they have done some study that was just not shared, or that
Right.
I'm just not aware of. Like, perhaps this has already been done. I feel like we've worked very hard to get all of the committees to be open with each other. So I don't know that sort of handing down a formal, recommendation is necessary. But I do hear you that we're not going to have a meeting for a while. So if we don't
Do you want me to
like
share
the
it?
informal route, we might not have enough time.
Yeah, Ken, do I need to give you
Mhm.
permission?
Yeah.
All right, try now.
And we're gonna, I guess, see what Ken wrote.
Well, I just
Ju-
drafted
just in
something
terms
real
of-
quickly.
But in terms of the substance, I would not want to call them out on the executive session, which, yeah, you're
Mhm.
not. I didn't think you would. More that this is just a,
Do we have
Okay.
any idea? Usually I try to make requests time bound. So is there any
Mm.
reason that we are requesting this to take place? Or is there a sense of urgency?
Yeah,
to this
I would
request?
say prior requests, discussion to examine with the goal, somehow word it where it says prior to a lease agreement being put forth. There you go.
And do we have any idea of when something like that might occur? The finance committee has been made aware that the art space lease is come to due
Right.
at X date. We understand that there's a process to go through this, and this is in the select board hands as the ultimate deciding factor. We
So
would
all
appreciate.
we're saying here is for them, prior to executing a lease agreement, that they engage in open discussion, examine all alternatives for the property, including not just lease, but sale or other disposition. And the idea is, understanding, we're trying to get two things: understanding of the trade-offs of those alternatives,
Mhm.
and, to achieve the maximum benefit, qualitative and quantitative, to the town.
Yeah, I wouldn't complicate it by adding more. I think the motion is pretty good as it is. I mean, it's obvious they know, I think we are operating with the idea that this may happen quickly. And
Yeah.
that's why I don't think we need to put all that in the motion.
Do we need to specify what open discussion means? If they read that, will they understand what that means?
Well, again, I
Like,
didn't
do we
want
say
to, I
open
didn't,
discussion?
yeah.
You don't want
Uh,
to tell them where it has to be.
I was trying not to call them out on the fact that this was happening in executive session. I mean, I think an
Okay.
open discussion that the Maynard community could,
During, we could say open discussion during a public meeting.
well, that's the only way they can do
That's the only way they
an
can do it.
open discussion.
Yeah. So that makes sense. That's just implied.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only alternative. It's the only
Right.
place that they can do it. And we're not saying how the open discussion needs to happen. Doesn't say, how much detail they need to go into or
Right.
something. It's just saying, have an open discussion, examine different alternatives, understand the trade-offs, and try to achieve maximum benefit to the town.
But it would require that they put it on the agenda, which we don't need to specify in the motion, but that it
Right.
be a properly noticed meeting with a discussion item on the agenda. So, we'll know about it from that, or
Yeah.
we may have to keep an eye out for it, but.
I'll
would,
keep an eye out for it.
I would propose one amendment to this, and that would just be to insert meeting between open and discussion.
So again, the
And-
only way they can have an open discussion is in a meeting.
Is in a public meeting.
That's redundant. The
Yeah.
only way they can have an open discussion is to engage in the meeting.
Okay.
Because we're saying we want the select board to engage. By saying the select board engage, it's an open discussion. There's only one way they can do that. I'm trying to make it I'm trying to not make it easy. I'm trying not to constrain unnecessarily the ways that they would go about doing that.
Yeah. Yep.
This is what frankly, they should be doing, but
I withdraw my amendment. That's fine.
Okay.
Looks good to me as is.
so I'll make a motion as written here.
I will second that motion.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Then I will do a roll call vote. Kevin,
I'm in favor.
Ken,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes,
Katie,
Yes.
Jillian,
Yeah.
and I'm a yes as well.
I'll
Ken, could
forward.
you just,
I'll
forward that to
this.
me? That'd be great.
I'm going to
Thank you.
forward it to you and to Katie so she has the specific wording.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other updates from members?
Just like to say again that I'm glad to be serving with all of you. And it's a privilege and a privilege to be sitting on this committee.
Thank you. And there's always a learning curve here. I know you're probably a little more informed than most due to the being at meetings and your involvement in town meetings and such. But there's lots of questions are fine, and we're here to help. So
I did have some minor items that carried over from the last meeting. I know I wasn't a sitting member
okay.
technically at the last meeting, but I do think, again, this is a minor item, but I do think given the reserve transfer request that we should follow up with the schools to make sure that they've identified the source of the mold that they had to
Oh,
remediate.
right. I'll ask about that.
Just to make sure that we're actually like being proactive and not just like putting a Band-Aid over an issue. but I would say that's low in priority compared to the other items.
Actually,
Was
Ken,
this for
would
the
it be,
school that they're planning to build a new school anyway, so maybe they're trying to not put a lot of money into it?
Yeah, was the mold in Green Meadow, or I thought it was in the middle school?
I thought some of it was Fowler,
Yeah,
no? Or was it all Green Meadow, Ken? Do you remember?
I mean, I
It was
can't,
Fowler too.
it was, okay.
Yeah, I thought it was.
We had, the effort at Green Meadow was so big that if there was, if there was mold elsewhere, I mean, it was,
Yeah,
I mean, Green Meadow is we're getting a new building. As long as they're not
Right.
exposing people to mold,
right.
it's fine. But Fowler, I'm a little bit concerned about because mold needs water to grow. So there's a water source there somewhere. And if they just cleaned up the mold and have not remediated the water
Right.
source, then that mold is just going to come back. And we're going to have to do another, we're going to have to, either they're going to address other funds, or we're going to have to do another reserve transfer request next year.
Right. Ken,
Um,
would you mind sending Natasha an email about that as the school committee liaison for us?
so I'm sorry, I was right in the middle of forwarding this thing too. So ask Natasha about what now?
It was asked of Wayne, but he said he wasn't sure. He'd have to ask the facilities manager, I believe, that the mold remediation that was done with the RFP completely, took care of the mold that's there and also whatever was causing it, or do they know what's causing it? Are we sure it's not going to come back?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure this is a thing to talk about much tonight, but I'm suddenly realizing the one big thing we didn't talk about tonight was the price tag on Green Meadow that was floated around via email. Did that come to, that was part of the budget subcommittee discussion, I guess. Maybe I should have updated on that. But did that get out to everybody? Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Something like the average tax bill is $650 for.
Yeah, I thought I
the-
forwarded Kavanaugh, maybe.
You did, Alana. You did.
Did you get that?
I
Kevin
didn't-
yet?
100 and something odd dollars per year it was gonna go up.
I have not
Okay.
received that. I have
All
not
right.
received that
I'll
email.
forward that to you. I'll go find it.
And that, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll have to make a recommendation on that come Springtown meeting, under what I think is
Yes.
the current timeline.
Yes.
But that's a pretty big number out there.
Mhm.
It seemed to me in looking at it, it's a pretty conservative high number, and that in
Yeah.
reality, it may end up lower than that. Both the price of the school seemed pretty high, and the state reimbursement rate seemed on the low side. That should just, it's a pretty big financial issue for the town.
I agree. And I think it's something that we most definitely have to keep in mind when we go into budget season this year, is that that's something that will be voted on at annual town meeting and will get put onto the taxpayers' bill. So just something to certainly keep in mind in our
And-
minds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure where you're at on that, Kevin. I was fairly involved, and my wife was more involved with the effort so there's both the town meeting vote, and then there'll need to be an override vote at the ballot.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that proponents of the new school are underestimating how much work went into building support for the high school, and that work isn't happening right now. And given the economy, the taxes already in place in Maynard, I have serious concerns that vote is going to lose. Despite, the fact that we're throwing away $30 or $40 million from the state. At this point, I don't see the effort in place that, you know, it was a year and a half effort to get the high school to pass with the 80% it did.
Mhm.
And it was a lot of meetings, you know, on a small scale to make that happen. And I don't, you know, I'm a lot more removed from the school system than I used to be. But
Right.
I don't see that happening around Green Meadow right now. And so
Well, I'll
I'm
ask
just
Katie, has
putting that
that
out
been
there.
discussed at the building committee meetings? The sort of PR work that goes into the voting?
No, I mean, there's been I think it's Jen has taken on the social media route of that, and they've talked about putting pamphlets in different, like at the library and different locations. So that has been discussed, but that's about it. It's a continuing discussion, it seems, without direct plans, more ideas.
All right, well, it
So-
might be something they want to get on if
Yeah.
this is annual town meeting. I mean, I know it seems like a long way away, but
It's not that far.
not very
Yeah.
far.
And they talk about, again, it's a lot about plans and thoughts and,
Right.
and I don't know that there's like action items backing those up.
But the consultants, I would think that we hired to do the plans is part of what they do to help make this happen. No, you're saying no, Peter?
Not as
I
I
don't think
recall.
so.
I mean,
No,
Okay.
it was,
I think they're more the architecture and the,
Right,
getting the funding portion of it.
right. Okay.
yeah, I mean, we couldn't pay a consultant to influence a town election. I mean,
Right.
that would be highly inappropriate.
Oh, yeah, no. I just didn't know if they had like a sort of a preset like timeline and like, here's where you should start doing this and here's where
No.
you need to do this and, and kind of help the town
I think
along
that
with.
borders on trying to influence the vote.
Okay,
They-
all right.
And
they
just
would
like-
say, you have to have a vote.
Just
Right.
like 2 weeks
But
ago, we were discussing like, oh, the library might be a good place. And, oh, the farmer's market might be good. That was just
Okay.
2 weeks ago. So,
All right.
So
I mean, I think for the most part, a lot of that should be coming from, school committee members and school, I don't know, other groups within the schools, I would hope would have some volunteers that,
right.
it's in their interest
Yeah,
to really work on this. As to Peter's point, I'm sure the reason his wife was so involved was because your kids were gonna go there,
exactly.
right? So, right, exactly,
Um,
yeah.
And I mean, elementary school suffers. I mean, we were talking about this a little bit at some other with just friends, but I mean, we had all been in the school system for 6-7 years and knew all the parents, had done sporting stuff.
Right. It's
All
harder
the
for
elementary parents
They're
are
newer.
just newer,
Yeah, sure.
and it's harder to organize that. And
Yep.
it really takes
It's
some
a good
effort
point.
to
It's a good
win
point.
a vote like that.
So my one comment on the issue is we do a lot of detailed analysis of what the new school costs. Have we done any detailed analysis of what keeping the old school around is going to cost us? Because I've seen some of the documents regarding the state of the roof, and it is very scary.
Yeah, there's definitely been one of the biggest drivers that I have heard at least is the fact that if we were to do a certain threshold, and I'm not sure what it is, but I know the school department would know, a certain threshold of renovation requires that the entire building come up to certain codes that are now in place. One of the biggest ones, I think, is the ADA compliance. So, it was even a concern to do any, like, currently, I think if the HVAC system were to go, that would put us over that threshold or whatever. So it's virtually not an option to do nothing
So,
because it'll cost us more.
and
at this
that,
point.
and that amount is cumulative over time. So
Yeah.
all the stuff that we did
Mhm.
to Green Meadow a few years ago, that counts towards
Towards that
Mhm.
threshold, right? Exactly. Which is what the point was made. Like, so we're already at this point. If something big goes now, we're going to hit that, and then we have to basically renovate the entire building to do some of these codes. So
So really the choice, it sounds like to me, the choice is either new school, pay for a new school or pay even more to try to get this money pit, to prolong the life of this money pit. And how long would the renovation last us before even more work has to go into it?
Yeah, it's,
I don't think,
The
I don't
Capcom
think,
might have done that because I think they didn't they do something similar for the fire station? Or was that something
Yeah.
the fire chief initiated himself?
there may be some, I haven't looked at the schools do have a website up about the Green Meadow process, and there may be some of what they did there, but I would
yeah,
have to go look.
they had laid out,
Mhm.
I'm very sure that they had laid out what the cost for, renovation was. I don't think there was any serious idea of renovating it for a school. There was some discussion about keeping the building for town purposes. But I don't think there was any serious, so the part that needs the most work is the older part that was built, prior to ADA.
Right, and in this process, they did go forth and look at renovating versus new. That was part of it, but I think this is a different kettle of fish entirely. This is like, if we don't go with MSBA, we don't go with a reno, or because the vote fails, right? Then to Kevin's point, we're really in trouble at that point if this doesn't go through. So that is information that needs to be part of the PR that goes out about this vote.
I think that as a finance committee, we do have a role in educating the voters about the financial aspects. And I think, and I wouldn't categorize it PR, I would categorize it as impartial, quantitative financial analysis of the options we have. And based upon that quantitative financial analysis, not approving the override is going to be catastrophic for the finances of our town.
Yep. No, that's a good way of putting it. And that can be something that goes in our information for town meeting, right?
Yep. So I think that's our role, is to impress upon the voters what the objective reality is, which is that, like, reality can be cruel sometimes.
Yeah.
But we face a very, painful, it's going to be painful either way, but the choice is between the lesser evil here.
Right.
And that's I think appropriate for this committee. And I think that's the message we need to press, especially the catastrophic nature of not approving it. I think we could beat that drum all day and be like shouting that from the rooftops in any way we can, that like this override is a must pass issue, or we're in for a world of, we're due for even more of a world of pain.
Yep, that can be part of our presentation at our public hearing prior to town meeting as well. All right. Is there anything else from members? Otherwise, our last agenda item, discuss upcoming meeting schedule, we've already hit on, so I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, roll call vote. Kevin?
Aye. Yes.
Danielle?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jillian?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. I will forward that motion and let you know any response, and I will see you all at the end of August.
Quick question.
Yep.
I just want to make sure I understood what you're asking me to send to Natasha.
Oh, yeah.
So, so you're talking about at the last meeting, there was reserve fund transfers,
Yes.
and which transfer was it that had to do with mold? There
I
was,
think it was specifically
Hold on.
mold at Fowler School was one part of one of them, and that's the one. Not the
Yeah.
mold at Green Meadow, it's the mold at Fowler.
okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that they've identified the water source and have a
Was
plan
it-
to remediate it.
Was it the air duct services? Wasn't the grease interceptor?
No, it wasn't that one. I believe it was the air
I think
duct.
it was the air duct.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'll look at the wording. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you all very much.
All
Good night.
right,
Good
thank you,
night.
everyone.
Night.